Dr. Rook, security expert, how do you use an iPad securely in an enterprise environment?
Well, that's actually a pretty good question. Today we're going to talk a little bit about that. Over the last couple years, the iPhone, iPad, iPod have started to creep into the enterprise, and there's been a lot of push, from top executives to make this work, and a lot of push from the security environment to say, hey, wait, no, we can't do that. But tides are changing and times are changing as well. In fact, Apple's been working really hard to become an enterprise company. They've spun up an enterprise support side, and they've been meeting with executives and asking what they really want, and they've done a good job. To that end, well, Magic Cat, securing an iPad or an iPhone for the enterprise environment has matured quite a bit. Now, it's not much different than securing it for personal use, but the tools involved have changed. Now, Apple released a time back the iPhone configuration tool. That tool was used to create profiles that were actually XML-based files that were loaded onto the phone to help lock it down, require passwords to require strong passwords, and have even enabled things like remote wiping or automatic wiping after the password's been entered incorrectly too many times. Now, while I said it was a lot like securing it for personal use, it's also a lot different because the scale of the work has increased. Now, utilizing this tool, the iPhone configuration wizard, can actually help cut down that time and make more repeatable some of the steps taken, and so that your devices are all configured the same way. Now, as we look at it, we need to talk about some of the top few steps to take for securing these devices in the enterprise. First of all, upgrade the firmware. They're shipped as current. That means when you get them, they've got the current firmware for that date of release. That means when you get the device and you unpackage it, it may have sat on the shelf for a while, you need to update that firmware. Next, set it up to require a password. And require a passcode is what it's called in the configuration utility or on the phone or device itself. Also set it to require alphanumeric. That's strong passwords. And if you check out our blog, you'll find out some tips for making strong passwords. Next, you want to set the auto lock timeout. How long does it sit before it locks itself and requires a password to resume use? Next, disable that grace period on lock. If somebody gets it just as the screensaver's coming on, there can actually be a grace period that allows them to just touch the screen and open it back up. That way, if they're just paying attention, they can actually restart it. Next, enable the data erasure upon failed logins. 10 logins is pretty good. So you got 10 chances to not fat finger your password. After 10, it wipes the device. Next, we want to enable a fraud warning in Safari, so that when you go to a malicious site, it can tell you. Now, that doesn't add much security, but at least tells your users that, hey, something funky is going on this site, and maybe you want to not go there. And last, enable data protection. Now, data protection does actually encrypt data. Now, it uses a key, a certificate key, derived from the user's password to encrypt the data that's on the device. But it's not a panacea. It doesn't encrypt all of the data. In fact, it will only encrypt data that is generated through applications that are aware of the data protection API. So make sure that when you're looking at this, it's not full volume encryption. So can these devices be used securely in the enterprise? Well, yeah, actually they are. In fact, a lot of banking and healthcare industry partners that we work with are starting to develop applications to run on these devices to tie directly into their enterprise. What are they doing? They're looking to make sure that the Wi-Fi is connected securely to the enterprise. Now, with this configuration utility from Apple, you can set it up so that you can import custom CA certificates and set up your wireless authentication so that we're not using passcodes anymore. We've talked about that earlier. And so that we're doing strong authentication for Wi-Fi. You can also harden these devices quite a bit. Last but not least, when you think about these, you gotta remember physical security. It's small. It can fit in my bag. I can walk right out the door with an iPhone, even smaller, an iPod, go right in my pocket and walk out, and who's to say it's not mine? So you really need to enable these good physical security controls around these. Have good processes. Now, we did talk a little bit about wirelessly wiping the device. That does require an internet connection, and there are some hoops to get through to make it work. So be careful upon relying on that, because it does have quite a few catches to make it work properly. But In the end, we can use these devices, we can use them securely if we follow some good principles. To find out more about this and other topics, check out our blog at rookconsulting.com/insight.